What is up, fellow Bills fans and any sports fans watching right now? This is the Undercovers cast. And yes, I am back for the first time in weeks. I've returned from Rochester up at Bills land, even went to Buffalo for the glorious Bills store at Highmark Stadium. But yes, I am Connor here with Paul and Ben and special guest Greg Tompsett from Cover One Buffalo. This guy is an incredible follow and was incredibly informative, him and his colleagues, during training camp if you were not there in person watching the glorious playing, because I was twice, and both days it was just absolutely incredible. That's the meat of the show tonight, too, is getting Greg's thoughts on what he's seen so far at training camp and just sharing things that we've seen from training camp, like players to watch, players that may get cut, players that surprisingly may stay on the roster because there's a lot of them. And right away, I just want to jump into it. Did either of you two have any particular questions for Greg? Because I got too many. If I started off, we'd be here forever. So, Paul, Ben,
That's why
if
we have
you
a
want to
that's
kick
why we
this,
have a show outline, Connor. That's why we have a show outline.
yeah,
See,
well,
somebody's
I
got to be organized. Somebody's got to be
Yeah.
organized.
exactly. It's never me.
Let's start with the first topic tonight, then we'll jump into my first question, and then everyone else can jump in as we go along. But let's start with this, Greg. What was your biggest week 2 takeaway? Maybe if you want to go back to week 1 during training camp, but what is your overall, week 2 takeaway? And we'll all go around.
So there's two that I think obviously are probably going to be in questions that are being asked, because I think these are what most people are asking about. And the two things are, how worried should we be about the safety position, and is the buzz around Keon Coleman real? So I'll start with the safeties. I'm right at the borderline. So it's kind of hard because I've been one of the people that I wasn't quite sold on the depth and talent level we had at safety overall. So I like Taylor Rapp, I like Mike Edwards, I like Cole Bishop, I like DeMar Hamlin, I even like D Delaney. I think we had guys who all are fine players. I wasn't excited about any of them. I wasn't ecstatic about any of them. So I've been wanting a Justin Simmons type upgrade the entire time. While everybody was healthy, I wanted a Justin Simmons type upgrade. So now Aaron was joking with me on the show last week. He's like, you just are using this as an excuse to go back to wanting Justin Simmons. I'm like, yeah, I'm not too proud to admit that. So I will say, obviously, we've seen Cole Bishop already out there walking around, no sleeve, no brace, doing all the exercises. It doesn't seem that serious. Hamstrings usually aren't long term, but I get a little nervous with Mike Edwards. He's a little bit older. Hamstrings can linger. So I'm going to say that we have to admit there's a chance DeMar Hamlin could have won that three-headed competition anyways. There's a chance that our first string safeties were going to be DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp walking into the season as it was, with Bishop developing and Edwards as depth. So we're that close to me saying I think we need to break glass in case of emergency and come up with some money to go pay Justin Simmons. And we have seen guys like Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs sign in the last little bit here, both in Tennessee. So I think that we're close to that, but I'm not quite at freak out territory yet. Everybody should be monitoring it. We hope those guys come back very, very soon. Right now, it certainly seems like DeMar Hamlin has a huge head start on that starting spot. The other side of it is, it's easy to look good when there's no pads on, when it's a lot of routes against air and it's hard to know what's there. But hey, a lot of these exciting catches for Keon Coleman were contorting his body, great body control, getting 2 feet down to tap and be able to really use that explosive athleticism. And people were wondering, is it really going to translate when there's guys in coverage? Not only has it translated, it's gotten better. Like, he's literally mossing someone every day in practice, going over top of guys, reaching over top, grabbing it, plucking it, pulling it back over. I know Sal Capaccio had the one comment where he said, I don't know what else Kyrie Elam could have done. I don't think there's anything he could have done to have better coverage. And Keon Coleman went up over top of him, snagged the ball, brought it back down, tapped his 2 toes in, touchdown. So I think I was one of the people who compared Keon Coleman a lot to the ceiling of T. Higgins because they both have the same arm length, they both have the same wingspan, height, 40 time, vertical jump. They were both drafted 33rd overall. There were guys that people had concern with, hey, they're slow. Does that mean they're not athletic? And people make that correlation so quickly that like that's not how it works. Like they're both very explosive athletes. It just happens that they're not straight line fast. They're not super fast in that timed mechanism, but they're actually both, very explosive athletes to be able to do that. So I thought long term that was something eventually we might see. I didn't think we were gonna see those kind of flashes every day in his first 10 practices as a pro. So, um, there's still a lot to be told. He hasn't even played his first preseason game yet. It's way too early to get excited, but anyone who was nervous that that was like a wasted pick, it looks like at a bare minimum, he's gonna be an exciting, fun player to add.
I tried to tell people for months that if you add Keon Coleman, you're not only adding a guy who can moss people with regularity. I mean, like I said, I was at training camp on Wednesday and Sunday, and there were times when Keon would just make these catches that you go, what? How did he manage to make this catch? And it's funny enough, some of the thoughts I had when I saw the catches, I looked at him and went, oh, yeah, Diggs isn't catching that. Or, oh, Davis isn't catching that. But Keon brought it down. So that's always been his strength. At FSU in particular, he was just able to jump up there, grab any ball Jordan Travis threw his way almost.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why FSU had one of the top offenses in the country was because whenever Jordan Travis threw it Keon Coleman's way, Keon was going to find a way to come down with the ball. And
And I'll add, if you guys listen, there's a handful of people out there, but Matt Harmon is one of the top wide receiver experts, and did some work. And I actually heard him, and there was another guy who was on with Robert Mays on the Athletic Football Show recently. I think Connor Orr maybe. And they were talking about how if you actually go back and look at his Michigan State tape, there's actually more film of him playing as a physical X receiver out on the outside. They used him sometimes as a big slot in Florida State, and people weren't sure which he looked at. And that his capabilities, he can be that outside X receiver, and showed even more of that at Michigan State.
mm-hmm. Michigan State actually ran an offense more tailored to Keon Coleman's pure natural skill set. Admitted, as an FSU fan myself, Ben is too, that we did not use him in the way that we realistically should have. So that's why I've always said, even before the draft, that I thought Keon Coleman's ceiling was that much higher than anybody was giving him credit for, because we just continuously misused Keon Coleman in critical situations at FSU. His Michigan State tape is actually fairly, I won't say more accurate, but it just shows his better side almost.
Yeah,
Like
more
what he's
variety. Shows
They
you
exactly.
running
ran
the full
a
route tree.
they ran a
Mhm.
more pro style offense at
Yes,
Michigan State,
Exactly.
they
which
asked him to
even
run
said,
more routes,
"Yep."
more diversity in the route.
And that's going to be the biggest thing that translates over into the NFL, especially, because I was seeing things where he was mossing guys like Rasul Douglas. And if he's mossing somebody like Rasul Douglas, who is definitively a top corner in the NFL already, imagine what he's going to do against guys like Sauce Gardner or Jalen Ramsey or L'Jarius Sneed, anybody like that. I know we don't play the Titans and won't the whole season, but I mean, it's just the sky's the limit with Keon. You got to hit one of them big time passes to get a touchdown right at the end of the game. Just throw it to Keon, he'll get it. He will practically bend time to get the ball, and that's what he's best at. And that's why I'm so glad that he is with the Bills, and that's why I'm just grateful that they're already forming good chemistry, him and Josh Allen. But I mean, when it comes to Josh Allen and chemistry, though, I don't think there could be any more said about that than his chemistry with Dalton Kincaid. Oh man, those catches at training camp were incredible. Sunday was more of it. I think he worked a little bit more with I think he tried a few more tight end plays, but I'm not really sure. I don't remember too much other than just being excited to be there.
Yeah, I think that Kincaid, people weren't sure, was that going to be just a big part of the offense, or was it going to be like the number one target? And what did that mean if we didn't have a traditional, number one receiver? We obviously, I don't think I have anybody who's going to get 160 targets like we saw at the peak of Diggs. But anyone who wasn't sure, Dalton Kincaid is going to be the centerpiece of this offense. He is going to, I would wager a fair amount of money that he leads the team in targets. That doesn't mean I'm not excited about, Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir and James Cook and other guys who are going to have a big piece of this. But Josh Allen's number one target is going to be Dalton Kincaid. I think we could see, I won't be shocked if we see 120 targets. I don't think 90 or 100 catches is out of the question. I think he's going to be the guy that really drives this forward. So anybody listening who's in fantasy, don't be shy about reaching for Dalton Kincaid. I think he's going to be a stud.
Oh,
Absolutely.
boy.
I mean, we've been talking about Dalton Kincaid all off season, and I feel like he can have like a Sam Laporta type season, or even just better than what Sam Laporta did last season in this Bills offense. But next question for you, Greg, is who is a player that you are really buying into the 2024 season? Like, what's the guy? Maybe he's under the radar, but you're like, ooh, that guy could be really important.
Okay. So there's a couple sneaky names, and really importance relative, but I think could be a much bigger piece than what people realize. One is Dwayne Smoot. Dwayne Smoot is a defensive end who he's been in Jacksonville for his career. He had 4 straight seasons of 5.5+ sacks every single year. And he's one of those like compression pass rushers. Like he will push the tackle back into the offensive lineman. He's not necessarily like a bend the edge speed guy, but he can collapse the pocket, which can really make a big difference when you have Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, guys like that, and then somebody like Von Miller or Jay Panessa coming around the outside. He signed for a pretty cheap deal, and I was kind of surprised. I thought he would get more money than that. You actually heard Ed Oliver talk about him in his press conference of how he was shocked that we were able to get him for what we got him for. And it's because he looked pretty bad last year. But if you go back, there's a reason why. So that string of seasons I mentioned, where it's 4 straight seasons of 5+ sacks, at the end of that 2022 season, he blew out his Achilles. But it was in week 17. So it impacted him all through training camp last year. He started the season on the PUP list, and then he tried to come back during the year, but he didn't look great. But he wasn't all the way back. And now in camp, he looks explosive and very, very capable, because now we are a full year and a half out from that injury. So it really is making a much bigger difference. I think he's a guy that was kind of a throwaway name, that one, he played in Jacksonville, so a lot of fans didn't recognize his name anyways, and just wasn't a guy that was like a huge celebrated signing. I think he's going to be way more impactful than people think. I think he's going to be a big part of that rotation and have a big impact. He's actually the guy that's been playing. He'll play defensive end, then on pass rushing downs, he'll switch inside for Daquan Jones, and he'll pass rush next to Ed Oliver with Gregory Rousseau and Von Miller on the outside. My guess is that will be our number one pass rushing set of 4 during the season, that our most impactful set of 4 pass rushers will be Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Dwayne Smoot, and Von Miller. When those 4 are on the field together, I think that's going to be very impactful. On the offensive side, I would caution people not to forget so quickly about Dawson Knox. I think he played through some injuries last year, and Dalton Kincaid is going to be far and away the number one target. And I think Dawson Knox will probably be like 5th or 6th on the team in targets, but I think people think of him as like a throwaway backup, and he's actually one of the best tight end 2s in the league. Like, he's a starting caliber tight end. He probably wasn't worth the crazy money we paid him. We paid him like a top 10 guy. He probably isn't. But that, I think people then think of, well, if he's not a top 10 guy, he must suck. And he doesn't. Maybe he's the 20th best tight end in the league, or the 24th best. Well, it's kind of cool when you have the 5th best tight end and the 20th best tight end. Like, that's really nice. So he's going to play, and he's going to have a bigger factor in this offense. I think those top 3 guys, you have Kincaid, and then even the top 3 receivers, Shakir, Samuel, and Coleman, And then, maybe it's, I don't know if it's James Cook or Dawson Knox who's got the 5th or 6th most targets, but I do think that Knox is still right there. And I think Knox probably has more targets than an MVS or a Mac Hollins or a, if somebody makes it as a 6th receiver.
You've been hearing Dwayne Smoot's name like every time you check an update for training camp, and you get some off time, you're like, Dwayne Smoot is making a big play. Like he's in there, he's disrupting, traffic. He's the guy that's, you want to guys that you sign during the offseason, you want them to make an impact, and you want them to kind of make that impact early on in training camp. And hopefully as we get into preseason games, he's doing the same exact thing as he's doing in training camp, being that disruptive force out on the defense. But Ben, do you have a question or two for Greg?
Go ahead to Connor, just because that's what the outline said, and I wasn't ready for the question.
Oh, come on, Ben.
You were on the spot too early.
He's trying to follow your instructions, Paul.
Yeah.
Oh my heavens. But actually, I love the thing about Dwayne Smoot because as a Jacksonville local, or close enough to Jacksonville to be a local, yeah, he was quite the name with the Jags. And when he went over to the Bills, yeah, needless to say, I got a little excited when I first saw the report because of how everybody around my area was talking about Dwayne Smoot. And yeah, it's the other way around too with Davis and Morse. They were really happy to get both of them. But
and I think it's okay to be excited about that. I wasn't excited when we cut Morris. I kind of had accepted the reality that Gabe Davis was going to get more money than we could probably afford, but I wouldn't have hated it if we kept Mitch Morris. So I understand them being excited. I think they have reason to be pleased about it, but I still think we netted out just fine.
Yeah, and that's very understandable. But what I was actually going to ask in terms of my question for you, Greg, you've obviously had a lot more access than I've been able to have, and any one of us. My question for you is, what do you think the wide receiver depth chart will look like at the beginning of the season? Because every time I watched training camp, every day I was there, I was like, oh man, Khalil Shakir's got to be the number one wide receiver, right? And then I look over and I go, oh wait, look at Curtis Samuel making these insane catches. Then I go, oh wait, there's Keon Moss and somebody again. So I don't know. It feels like you could honestly order this wide receiver room any way you want, and it would make sense. I just don't know how they would think to do it. And I was wondering what your input on that is.
All right, so I'm going to give you a total cop out, but I think there's a chance that 4 different receivers lead us in 4 different statistical categories. I think you can make a pretty good case that Curtis Samuel has the most targets and catches. I think he's going to be a big part of the schemed up offense. I think there's going to be a ton of bubble screens, a ton of those little pop passes that we used to do to like Isaiah McKenzie on the jet sweep crossers and things like that. A lot of quick wide receiver screens. I actually think we're going to line him up in the backfield. Remember when we did that a little bit with Stephon Diggs last year, where he'd line up as a running back and then go out? I think we might do that with Curtis Samuel every game. So I think he might have the most targets and catches. Khalil Shakir will be just behind him, but he's so much more efficient in his touches in the yards per catch and yards downfield. I think Khalil Shakir will lead our receivers in yardage. I think he'll have the most yards on the season. I also think we've seen so much red zone usage that I think Keon Coleman might have the most touchdowns out of the receivers and have, maybe it's only 50 catches for 700 yards. But if he had 11 touchdowns, I won't be shocked. Like, I think he's going to be a huge weapon in the red zone. And then I think there's a chance Mac Hollins might play the most snaps. Like, I think he might just be on the field all the time I think he's going to block the most out of any of them. He's going to run the clear out routes as the X receiver. He probably won't. He probably won't end up doing that, but I think he's going to play way more than people think. I think that he's going to be out there a lot and going to be a big part of what they do, especially until Keon Coleman's ready to do all of those things early on. Of what's there. I think that's going to be a pretty defined top 4. I think those 4 are going to be separated from everybody else. I still I still think Marquez Valdes-Scantling makes this team. I'm not 100%, and I do think there's a chance that the guaranteed money they gave him isn't enough to offset if he doesn't have a good camp. But I will say the last couple days I've heard of a lot more highlights out of him and making some good plays. He's dropped the ball because sometimes he drops the ball, and that's just he's that's going to happen. That they knew that, and people have to bake in that was a way bigger issue when Kansas City was paying him $11 million a year. We're paying him $2 million a year to be our wide receiver 5. Like 50-50 is what you get for $2 million a year in wide receiver 5. He's a Gabe Davis guy. Like he goes deep and he's going to catch the ball half time. Like that's what's going to happen. So I still think he's going to make the team. And as of right now, I'll be completely honest, I kind of think we only keep 5 wide receivers. We have so much depth at defensive line, and the new rule makes me think we need 6 linebackers, and we have like 11 defensive backs that I think all deserve to make the team. I do think that fun group of former second round pick trying to reclaim their former title, whether you pick Andy Isabella or KJ Hamler or Chase Claypool, all former second round picks who are looking to cling to their last roster spot. You've heard buzz around Terrell Shavers. Some people really liked Xavier Johnson coming out of Ohio State in this draft. I think there's a chance one of them, especially if they really make a role for themselves on special teams, or as a returner, if KJ Hamler wins that return job, which I think is in play. I don't think anybody has really run with that yet. Preseason games will probably matter there, and the joint practices. But right now, if I had to guess, I would put money that the 5th receiver is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We don't keep a 6, and we try to re-sign like 3 of those guys to the practice squad. That's my guess, is we try to get Hamler and Isabella and Terrell Shavers all to the practice squad. Chase Claypool's the kind of guy that I think you either have him on the roster or you don't. I don't know that he's a guy that you risk him being happy in the locker room, not being on the roster. But he still has a chance to win that roster spot too. So that's my guess right now, is we keep 5 with those 3 guys trying to get him back on the practice squad.
Nice. As long as we get rid of Claypool, I'm satisfied.
Right now, I mean, he can't stay healthy long enough to even compete for it.
Yep. That, and he's causing problems on the field. He got into that one altercation in camp, and who was it that threw the football back at him that one day in camp? I think that was Sunday. He tried to, I watched the route. I forget exactly. What was it, Christian Benford, or was it, I can't remember who it was, but
might have even been Jamarcus Ingram.
It could have been, but either way, he tried to cross
Who's also
him up.
a big guy, as big as he is.
He tried to trip him. Claypool got him off the route, caught the ball, and kind of did, I don't know what he said, but I know he said something enough to make him get a football thrown at him. I mean, that guy, Chase Claypool, is just going to, in my opinion, be a vibe killer in the locker room. And
all seasons, Connor's just been a certified Chase Claypool hater, so I think there's some bias in there.
Admittedly, I was not interested in the signing, so I'm not a huge fan by any nature. I have been open to the idea that being kicked to the curb by the Bears and the Dolphins can be a very humbling experience. So if there was a chance that a guy was going to come in and do all the right things and accept being a special teams guy and really rebuild it, that was the opportunity to do it. And he said the right things when he got here. He said he was willing to do those things, and he said all the right things. Unfortunately, we haven't really got a chance to find out because he hasn't stayed healthy. So it's really hard to know how genuine those things were, because there were reports he said similar things when he got to Chicago, and then that turned sour when he didn't get the opportunities he thought he deserved. So, I think right now it's looking pretty unlikely, but there's still time. There's a lot of camp left. There's, we haven't even played our first preseason game yet.
This is true.
This might be the last thing for you, but I feel like this is a fun little game that we could end out our time with you here. It's start, bench, cut. Bench would be practice squad in this scenario. So for position battle, Shavers, Davison, Hardy, who do you think could start? Which one do you think makes the practice squad? Which one are you just ultimately just getting rid of?
All right, give me the list again.
Shavers, Zach Davison, Hardy.
Okay. So the good news for anybody listening, I think all three legitimately have a shot. Sadly, they're probably all slightly below 50%. Like, I don't know if I would put any of them on my roster today, but they literally might be my 54th, 55th, 56th guy. I think they're right there. If I had to rank them in order of likelihood, I'm going to say Hardy has the best shot because I think he has the least competition, not least competition, the most open competition for that return job. And he's really good at that. So I think Hardy has the best shot, not because he's the best player out of the three, but because he's best at the thing that is the most open job. I have no idea who the two returners are for the job. Like, I know Shakir could do it. Some people have wondered if they put Samuel back there on kick return. We obviously have seen, some other guys like Isabella and Hamler be back there. I think they're all in the running, but Hardy was drafted for that reason and is really good at it. So I think he's absolutely in the running, probably has slightly the best chance. A lot of people have been talking about Terrell Shavers. So I think he has a very legit shot at that wide receiver 6. He's got to do all the right things. He's got to do all the special teams dirty work. He's got to be on every coverage unit. He's got to be out there doing the run blocking. Wide receiver 6 is a very thankless job on a roster. You have to be willing to do everything. But if he's willing to do more of that than Chase Claypool, more of that than Xavier Johnson, more of that than these other guys, or more value than what a KJ Hamler or a Daquan Hardy's return role would be, he could beat them out. I think unfortunately Zach Davison has the hardest path because we already have 4 tight ends that are good, because I count Reggie Gilliam as a tight end. And it's like you just have a really hard hill to climb, because obviously Kincaid and Knox are roster locks. Reggie Gilliam and Quentin Morris played this 2 most special team snaps of anybody on the team last year. Like, they played more special teams than anybody else. That's a lot to beat out and to overcome. So I like him. I wouldn't mind finding a path for him, but 5 tight ends is a lot. That's really, really hard. But you never know where they allocate that 53rd roster spot to. If he shows he could play special teams and do all those other things, I guess there's a chance. But I have a hard time believing that they cut Quentin Morris, and I really don't think they're going to keep a 4th tight end, especially when Reggie Gilliam can play fullback and tight end. So he can do both of those. We already kind of have 3 on the roster, plus Quentin Morris is the 4th one. I don't think we'll keep 5, even if I probably think Davison deserves it.
Stick him on the practice squad. He's going to get immediately poached by the Dolphins. We all know it's coming, because
it's possible.
Zach Davidson is better than literally their starting tight end. At least everything I see in camp, I go, oh, wow, he's already better than Durham Smythe or Tanner Connor or
They signed
Hill.
Jonnu Smith this offseason.
Oh, okay. Still better. Still very much better. Let's be completely honest, Greg.
It's always... We get very anxious about the releases and the claims. Each year, it's usually like 2 or 3% of the guys that get released get claimed. So there's a chance 1 or 2 guys does, but it's always less than what we think. More guys get snuck on the practice squad than we are fearful about.
Good. I'd rather not lose him. He seems like he's been making a lot.
I would love to be able to.
He's been making a lot of really nice plays in camp, from what I hear. And that would just be huge to have, even on the practice squad, in case something were to happen to like Knox, Kincaid, or even Quentin Morris.
Here, I'll even put it to you guys. It's very likely going to come down to, what if we have 1 roster spot for Terrell Shavers, Zach Davison, Daquan Hardy, Kingsley Jonathan, Jamarcus Ingram. 1 of those 5 guys can make it. Like, everybody has their favorites, and oh man, I've been rooting for this guy forever. But a lot of times it's going to come down to, hey, we got 52 spots locked up. There's 1 spot left. Very likely 4 of those guys aren't going to make it. You throw Frank Gore Jr. in the mix. There's other guys that are going to be in there that are going to be fun stories. but eventually it's still a talent competition, and you can only pick so many spots.
Mm-hmm. That's the worst thing about the 53-man roster right there.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah,
I do wish
hard
they'd
to
do an
even-
expansion. All right, one last question, Paul, and I'm out.
All right, Ben, here you go. Sneak one in.
Get him.
All right.
Oh, man, the spotlight's not working.
I know.
The lights were too bright.
I mean, it was gonna be about. My question was gonna be about Zach Davidson. So I'm trying. I
you
guess I
can
could
still
defer to
ask it.
either of you. Now, if you guys have a question, I don't really have anything at the moment because I was gonna ask about Davidson.
Oh man, the spotlight, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Go get
I
those
think
lights
that's about
on.
it.
Yeah,
That's
I
about
think
it.
that's it, actually, Greg. Thank you.
All right, guys,
Thanks,
appreciate
Greg.
this. Was a lot of fun. Really appreciate you guys having me on. Hopefully, we
right.
have a healthy off season the rest of the time.
Yeah.
You guys have some fun.
Please.
Appreciate what you guys are doing and building up here. I hope everybody's checking out the Undercovers podcast. But I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
All right,
sweet.
take care,
Bye.
Greg.
Thank you again.
Greg.
All right, go Bills.
All
Go
right,
Bills.
Go Bills. And obviously, you can find Greg over at Cover One. So make sure to follow Greg and Cover One because they put out some of the best Bills content in the
Oh, yeah.
game. Honestly,
Mhm.
period between national, local, whatever fan, either like professional fan content, whatever. They're some of the best. Just the film. I mean, they actually have actual players come on the show too to break down the film with them, so they do excellent work. So make sure you check out Cover One. So now we actually have a Bills football game to talk about that's going on this week. So Bears Bills preseason game at the almost at the Ralph. I mean, it's still technically the Ralph, but at Highmark Stadium, 12 p.m. It's going to be Caleb
12 p.m.
Williams.
Is that Central Time?
Oh, it is 1?
It's
I thought it
1
was 12.
It's
Okay.
1.
All
It's
right, my
1.
bad.
The Central Time.
I
Come on, Ben.
apologize. I think actually there is a game at 12, but I'm just I guess I'm just
Is
babbling
that-
right now. But anyways, the Bills play the Bears at 1 p.m. on Sunday. We actually have real football coming up this week, so
Oh, at last.
it is exciting to kind of see some of these roster battles kind of progress more before our eyes. Now, I guess as far as Josh Allen, has McDermott said or Brady said anything yet about the ones playing yet, Paul?
Not yet. I mean, it's
Okay.
Monday, so we'll probably wait till about Wednesday to probably maybe
Yeah.
they'll
Now,
probably keep
some
it to
teams have
Thursday.
already announced, like
True.
D'Amico Ryan said the Texans are playing their ones when they play the Steelers on Friday.
I mean, I wouldn't
Wait,
be
this soon?
surprised if they would wait to
Yeah,
the final
playing their
preseason game
ones.
against the Panthers. But I mean, there's a good possibility you could see Josh Allen versus Caleb Williams on Sunday. I mean, Saturday.
To me, maybe it's an unpopular take. I don't know. Maybe it's a popular take. Week 1 of the preseason just is not the time to play ones. Keep your ones off the field at all costs to avoid needless injury until maybe like a drive or even a quarter of like your third preseason game. I don't really see the reasoning behind getting Josh Allen and the rest of them on the field for what essentially is a meaningless game against the Bears. I mean, sure, we need to try to develop the Josh Allen to Keon Coleman connection before the regular season begins, but that's why there's 3 regular season games and not just, none. So,
Right. I mean, we could end up seeing them, I guess, the week after in Pittsburgh then. But I mean, I'm not going to be opposed to any preseason playing because if I'm not mistaken, Mahomes usually plays at least the first couple preseason games, if not every preseason game. And I mean, to me, it seems like that has worked out pretty well for them. As far as getting into other aspects of this game, Keon Coleman, it's going to be his first game. I would imagine he probably plays most of at least probably the better part of the first quarter, if not the first half. And I would say you could probably expect him to get probably at least 2 or 3 catches. I'm not going to put massive expectations, maybe a touchdown. I mean, if Allen plays and we get a touchdown to Coleman in preseason, that would be just super.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know. Me and Connor,
I'm gonna get a noise complaint.
Lose our.
I'm gonna get a noise complaint in the area.
But yeah,
yes,
I mean
please.
that would be awesome if first preseason game, Keon and Josh can really just establish that connection right off the get go. But I would say probably at least like 2 to anywhere between 2 to 4 catches is reasonable expectations in his first ever NFL action. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, it's like I said, keep it minimal. Give him time to get used to how an NFL game feels, and then the minute he's got it, get him off the field. We're just trying to minimize injuries to the ones as much as possible before the season starts, because with this team and injury luck seem to never coincide with each other. So if we can minimize the amount of likelihood that an injury could be presented, then I'm all for that over having them play and try to, maybe be out there for what? I mean, that's the whole thing. We need to establish the chemistry, but let's make sure we're doing it later in the preseason where we can just jump right into the regular season while everybody's still fresh. That's why I'm more for playing the ones at the back half of the preseason as opposed to just starting them right away, because there's still roster spots that need to be, shaken up and sorted out.
But you do have until the end of camp now, because you don't have the cut down to 75. It just goes 90 to 53. So I mean, you still theoretically have the last preseason game. Now, Paul, any thoughts on Keon's first game before we get to our next topic?
I think Keon, if the ones do not play, that means Shakir probably doesn't play, Kincaid doesn't play, Samuel doesn't play. Probably
Samuel, yep.
So that means it's Mitchell Trubisky to Keon Coleman, and with the other twos. So you could expect that Keon Coleman is going to be the primary receiver out there if they do go that route. So
sure.
I would say about a quarter and a half for Keon. Maybe if they get a final drive toward the end of the second quarter.
What's the stat line prediction?
I think he can grab about 5 catches. I feel like he's going to go 5 catches, about maybe 75 yards, and
I like
sneaking a touchdown.
That would be a great debut performance. Now,
tell me about it.
Besides receivers, is there any other battles you're looking out for this weekend? Now, I'll say one that's actually been heating up quite a bit, and now, of course, that we're talking about it, I think of another excellent question as far as Kaiir Elam's legitimacy to win that cornerback 2 job, but it's really picking up steam. And even if Keenan Allen doesn't play, if Rome Odunze and DJ Moore play with Caleb Williams this week, that would be a great test to put out Elam and Benford and kind of just see what they got, and maybe switch up the matchups to see how they fare versus one receiver versus the other. But if you need a good litmus test for these corners, I think it would be an excellent starting point to just kind of see who has the leg up for the corner 2 job. Because right now, I think if at the end of last season, if we were to have these conversations, you would have said I was crazy, but based on camp and how Kaiir has been playing, I think there's actually steam behind him getting that corner 2 job, which isn't an indictment on Benford, because Benford actually was locking everything up today, according to reports. But that's just how good Elam has had a turnaround this season.
It's unbelievable.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not, because you stole my thunder, by the way, because I was going to say the cornerback 1 battle. Like cornerback 1 or cornerback 2 battle, because if Kaiir Elam continues to play this way, I mean, Douglas probably has CB2 locked up.
Right. So he's definitely he probably has a starting spot just by default, but it is interesting that his contract ends after this year, so
Mhm.
maybe they let him walk and get a comp pick, and then they'll just end up going with a Benford Elam duo going forward.
You know, I'm
Yeah,
buying
if
into
Kyer
Elam
improves that
ever so
much.
slightly. You know,
Well, they
it's
may
camp.
eventually. I don't know if so. Even if they both play well, you may not be able to even extend both of them because now that I'm thinking about it, it would be Benford's 4th season unless they can extend Benford. You do have the 5th-year option on Elam, but he actually has to play well, to earn that right for them to pick it up.
Mhm.
But outside of corners, do you guys have any other positions you're looking forward to as far as battles?
Wide receiver,
Okay.
and specifically the bottom half of the wide receiver. I know Greg talked about it a little bit while he was on, but I am very curious to see exactly how the final half of the roster shakes out with wide receivers because, yeah, I don't know if they'll keep 5. I don't know if they'll keep 6. But as far as players that I'd like to see actually get a good shot to stay on the roster, Tyrell Shavers is 100% on that list after watching him on both Wednesday and Sunday during training camp. My God, that man was amazing. I think he did most of his work with the 2s, or he might have done more with the 3s. I don't remember exactly which, but he looked incredible every time I watched him play. And I'm like, man, we got to find a way to get this guy onto the roster because I feel like if you put Tyrell Shavers on the practice squad, someone's going to get him. And that's going to be an absolutely horrible, horrible thing when he's somebody's backup and that somebody happens to be to the Chiefs. But that's not something I'm going to try to put in anybody's head anymore. Um, I still, and I kind of agree with Greg. I think the guaranteed money they gave MVS is going to keep him on the roster, even though his camp practices have been absolutely horrible. Like,
It's not even that they've been horrible. If you listen to Joe Brady, he wasn't really in the offense, during mini camps and OTAs, so he really wasn't up to speed. They didn't install any wrinkles with him, so they're starting to implement him. He did have a couple drops the other day, but he's starting to come on, as of late. So I mean, I don't think it's that surprising, you know, just because we signed him when like June, so I would give it more until like the end of camp, But I agree with Greg. I think he's making the team. Just we
yeah.
also have to consider we also don't really have a true deep threat right now besides MVS, so
Yeah.
he still should have a role in that regard. Paul, what other positional battles are you looking forward to if there were any other besides corner receiver for this game?
Those are kind of the obvious ones. You could say the
Right.
other obvious one is safety. So I'm kind of going
Safety.
kinda
Yeah, it's gonna be
I'm not gonna
interesting.
go safety because it feels
Okay.
obvious, so I'm gonna go linebackers behind Terrell Bernard and Matt
Oh,
Milano.
That's
Uh,
a good
okay.
one.
Yeah.
Dorian Williams has been, hasn't been talked a lot about during training camp,
Oh,
but he's been a sneaky,
I
really
mean,
good
he's
player.
been playing. He's been
Mhm.
getting the majority of Milano snaps when
Oh,
Milano
yeah.
is out, and he's starting to
Mhm.
show that year 2 development that we kind of saw from Terrell Bernard last season. And the advantage we have this year is we actually have Williams competing and getting all those reps in training camp, and he's going to be playing in the preseason because I don't know if you guys forget last year the whole conversation was, would Bernard even be ready for the regular season, because he was out pretty much the entire
Mhm.
preseason and training camp, and that was such a big concern, was whether Bernard was ready, whether
Mhm.
the lack of reps were gonna really affect it. And obviously it didn't for Bernard, but that's just gonna be a benefit to Dorian Williams, is getting
Mhm.
the extra reps and the experience in the preseason.
He's
Absolutely.
playing with the ones without Milano. I mean, back at the red and blue scrimmage, Milano took individuals, but Milano didn't take team reps and with
Right.
7-on-7s and 11-on-11s.
Mhm.
And who was in his spot? It was Dorian Williams right there, and he looked pretty good. I mean, that the speed is coming with him. I think it's coming back with him. He had that speed out in Tulane. You're starting to see that quick burst with Dorian Williams, and he's starting to tackle a little bit better too. So reps, starts, I think the Bills have a really have a chance to have a 1-2-3 punch in their linebacking core. I know we have one more topic during the preseason, but I want to add one just really quick, just throwing it out there, going off script. On the defense here, what do you guys want to see out of Bobby Babich? If he's going to call plays, or do you think he's not going to call plays on Saturday?
I don't know if you caught what he said, but he did mention he's going to be in the press box during his press conference. So to me, that means he will be calling plays. But I guess we'll see. But that's just what I took from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the man is, as the insiders described, a human energy drink, and I resonate with that, as both of you know. So,
I'm sure.
well, Ben, you obviously know. You remember Wednesday at training camp, right? When we got there, I downed one and then downed another one on the way. So that's what I'm saying. I love the energy Bobby Babich brings to the defense, and I really kind of think that him being in the booth is almost an undersell of Bobby Babich's talent. Just being out there and yelling and firing up everybody on the team. I think that's actually probably would have been a better strength. But at the end of the day, if he's taken things off of Sean McDermott's plate, I'm all for that, because only good things can come from this. So I'm more than happy to see Babich take over the full defense and just let McDermott actually focus on, actual head coaching things like clock management and using your timeouts properly, which is still technically clock management, but you know what I mean.
Right.
And let's see, actually, there is one thing that I am amazed nobody brought up when we're talking about position battles. I just want to touch on this really quickly, Paul. I know we moved on, but it's just odd that nobody really touched on it, and that's offensive line. Did you guys hear that the guy we drafted, Cedric Van Pran-Granger, I believe, SVPG, everybody's starting to call him, he practiced with the twos the other day, and I actually quite like that, because if something happens to Connor McGovern, or Connor McGovern keeps snapping the ball incorrectly at him, I actually kind of like the idea that Cedric Van Pran-Granger could be ready sooner than people think. And yeah, I have the flashbacks to Connor Williams every time I hear about a snap. So yeah, I actually kind of like the fact that Cedric Van Pran-Granger was getting better enough to take snaps with the twos. Overall, I just like the continuity on the offensive line. So fingers crossed that Cedric is going to be him, because obviously he's going to get a roster spot. I don't think you would not give him a roster spot after drafting him. So we'll see exactly what happens, but it's just interesting that nobody touched on the offensive line battles going on.
Yeah, I think it's just more or less because there isn't really any starting positions necessarily up for grabs right now, unless McGovern really just pisses the bed, and I mean he still can, but I think right now the five, which is good. It's nice to have continuity and to not have really questions on the offensive line.
Tell me about it.
But yeah, other than that, really the only thing else of real note in the NFL circles is Brandon Ayuk of the Steelers is really gaining some steam. So we'll see within the next 24 hours if Ayuk gets traded there. That would, honestly, to me, if he goes there, it doesn't really change the complexion of the AFC to me. Like,
are you sure
I
about
know that sounds crazy. Yes, because as long as Justin Fields or Russell Wilson is back there slinging the ball, they would have to have like a 2000 Ravens defense and just an absolute killer run game in order to be effective with those quarterback
So you mean a defense that has arguably the best linebacker in the league and one of the best safeties in the league?
The best linebacker? Who's that?
TJ Watt, of course.
Oh, I mean, obviously, as far as like defensive linemen, yeah, they have one of the best edge rushers. They do have a great safety, but
and they've got Cam Hayward too. I mean, that defense is
he's
strong.
getting a little long in the tooth. It's good,
Isn't he?
but it's not like they need to. That defense needs to get to like another level. That's just me with that quarterback pairing. But
oh yeah,
I mean, I could be off base, but
they did sign
I'm not
Patrick
really
Quinn.
now. If say a team like Baltimore were to go out and add Ayuk to go with Andrews, Derrick Henry, and
that
Flowers,
would be stupid.
That would be filthy. The Browns, it's kind of the same boat with Pittsburgh, even though I think the Browns are a slightly better team, top to bottom.
Ew.
But
what blasphemy are you on?
I mean, I'm just going off last season. They were a better team last season. They had a just as good of an offseason, if not slightly better.
Yeah,
they had a very solid draft as well. So I think the Browns. I mean, but reports say that Ayuk actually turned down the Browns. So I mean, it will be interesting if he goes to Pittsburgh, but I don't see it really making them a Super Bowl contender. But I could be wrong. But
he's a Bill.
We'll see. Now, if he was a Bill, that would absolutely be crazy. I just don't see it, but
neither do I.
I actually like our receiver room. But we'll see that receiver room and the rest of the team on Saturday. But besides that, that's all I got tonight.
Let's have some fun at the final. You forgot that small little question up top on our outline. Which Olympic sport would you compete in and win gold in? I'll go around. It's the Olympic season. I want to have some fun before we head out.
There's no football. There's no racing.
I could do any of these, to be honest with you. I'm not like even the basic ones. If you're to say table tennis,
man's a 5-star Olympic athlete out here.
If I were to go out and try to play table tennis against these people, I probably wouldn't even get a point up against them. Like, it is ridiculous, the skill level. Or say something like badminton, archery, like these people are. It just kind of speaks to the skill level of the Olympic athletes. But I mean, shooting, you would think maybe, but then you have that one guy from Turkey who didn't even need eye protection and who was just basically a trained assassin who got the freaking silver. Yeah, I wish I could say I would get an Olympic gold in anything, but I really don't, unless it's like basketball and I was like the team manager. Like that would really be it.
So basically a 3 for 3.
No, I would be like an assistant coach on like Team USA with LeBron. Those guys could carry me to a goal.
So you would have done men's basketball. I would have done women's basketball, just to say, why do we have Haley Van Lith on the 3v3 team? Why can't Why can't we go get somebody like Kelsey Mitchell or even Aaliyah Boston, or just an actual WNBA player instead of somebody who flips colleges to chase a ring like Kevin Durant? Just saying. But anyway, if you want to give me a sport that I'd probably wind up not getting a gold in, I do have a surfboard behind me. I guess I could try to go surfing. They do that at the Olympics, but
they do.
I actually used to run. I probably would just try to get myself back in shape and go run track and field again. No, just like the quick 100, like the 40, stuff like that. I could probably do it if I got myself back in shape, which, speak of back in shape, let me just get my flexibility back, go be the Bills kicker like I had said on posts elsewhere online, and I'll replace Tyler Bass. The next time he misses a kick, they're just going to sign me right away. Not even going to waste time.
All right, Paul. Let's hear your.
All right. My Olympic sport that I honestly think I could win gold in. If I stuck with this sport, I think I could win gold. I was a really good track and field runner back out in years ago when I was in elementary school, made the relay team a few times. So I think I would, if I stuck with track and field with a really good sprint, I think I can win gold.
Nice. So
Beat
Okay.
out Noah Lyles by a torso.
Oh my God. And then Tyreek Hill's going to show up and be like, all right, watch this. And then outdo everybody.
All right, but that
that's
should
Tyreek, though.
do it for tonight, right?
That's it.
Yeah. I
All the
think
topics.
I think we're all good here. I don't know if Paul has anything else he's holding back, but I certainly don't, other than God, training camp was great. You know, that was
was.
yeah, that was quite the time being there, watching the players, you know, get ready for the season. Just the aura around the Bills seems almost unbeatable this year. The vibes are high, and I'm looking forward to it. You know, got my official training camp hat on, got my Tyler Bass side jersey. Hopefully that brings good luck, because the minute he missed that 58-yarder in camp, I was like, oh, all right, that's it. I'm going to be the Bills kicker now. And then he immediately makes the rest of his kicks all camp. And I'm
All right,
just
I'm
like,
gonna
oh,
defend Tyler Bass just a little bit because that 58-yarder that he missed at Highmark Stadium, that was to the wind section and it was raining.
okay,
So
yeah.
give him some slack there. Then he made 4 after.
Hey,
When it-
now I kind of like
Yeah,
Tyler
but
Bass
if you
overreact
all
to
right,
behind
that.
me.
I'll just say this as we close. If you play in the Northeast in Buffalo, you do have to be able to make a kick in the elements. Otherwise, you'll just end up being like that Browns kicker that they drafted in like the 4th round, and he couldn't even make it past his
Wait a
first
minute.
year. I
But
forgot what
that's
his
a
name was.
58-yarder. I mean, he made 4 after that. So I mean, I
Man,
guess
remember the
58's
Pittsburgh game? That was a 30-yarder in the playoffs. Or
Okay,
the
I
other
get it.
one, which was under 50, which would have tied the game. Like,
Wait,
yeah, I'm
Ben,
not giving him any slack right now. Yes.
I think that kicker was that not Roberto Aguayo, our old guy?
No, it was not. It was Cade York. Yes.
Oh, Cade York,
Yeah,
He
right.
was so bad.
Let's
Oh
be
my
honest.
God.
Roberto Aguayo was so great for us
Yeah.
at FSU, went to the NFL and was an absolute
I
disaster.
guess the sun in South Florida like fried his kicking form or something.
Well, that's Tampa's son. That's not as bad as Miami's son. Let's be completely honest. In Miami, you're
Isn't
much
Tampa still further south than Tallahassee?
yes, but at
Yes.
the end of the day,
It's
you know, it's not
like
going to do much
Tallahassee's
more.
like at the northern tip of Florida. And
All right. Well,
It's
that
not that
should do
kind
it
of more
tonight.
like
not that
Next
far away.
week we will talk about the game and actually have some actual reactions. So Connor
For
and
real,
Paul,
man.
thank you again. And go Bills.
Man, is it good to
Go
be
Bills.
back? Go Bills.
Go Bills.